Hey, everybody. I'm Chris Metzler, one of the programmers here at SF DocFest. Thank you for joining us. We're celebrating our 23rd year, and for 23 years, we've been bringing some of the most interesting, cool, and just interesting documentaries from around the world here to the Bay Area. And sometimes we're lucky enough to actually have a Bay Area and local story and filmmakers. And you just saw the really wonderful documentary Born for This. And we have Jessica, and Lisa here. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Yeah.
So I think maybe a good place to start is, Jen, what was the kind of genesis for the project, and that you knew this was kind of a rabbit hole of a documentary you wanted to go down?
Yeah, I was pregnant with my daughter in 2018, and I had planned to have like a home birth with a midwife and doula, and had just such an empowering, amazing experience being cared for by my midwife and my doula, and just like being educated by them. And I learned so much like about, what I was capable of, and childbirth and stuff like that too. But like, I just felt like I could do anything. If I could have a baby, I can do anything, And I already thought that I wanted to do some sort of film that would just kind of honor the role of midwives in community building and like empowering mamas and all that kind of stuff. But then I ended up having like what was a pretty horrible, like traumatic and near-death experience in childbirth. It was about a month premature, and I had to transfer to the hospital, and the transfer process was really sticky. And then I kind of felt like I was dying, but wasn't really getting like the attention that I felt like I needed. And my doula had to kind of intervene. And long story short, I ended up having what was pretty much an unnecessary, like it didn't have to be that way. It didn't have to be an emergency C-section. Like it could have been much more just kind of like thoughtfully done. And so after that, I started researching like systemic issues in maternal health care, and learned a lot more about disparities in care, and particularly for Black women. And my like sense of justice around this got kind of inflamed. I was kind of like getting angry the more I learned about it, and just kind of how unnecessary all of this harm and trauma is. And then started looking at who are the people that are trying to make this better, who are the people who are going to turn the ship around, and that kind of thing. And that's what led me to looking at, Black midwives and Black doulas in particular, and the people that they're serving, and, how much of a difference it makes to be cared for by someone who, looks like you, who kind of understands you, who really has your best interests at heart. And people may still end up in the hospital, and hopefully there are providers there too who share that same ethos. But I ended up meeting Devon Crawford through a conference that I was at. We're in Alabama. She was local here in the Bay Area, and we just kind of started talking and became friends. And then one thing led to another. She introduced me to Lisa Davis, the midwife that you saw in the film, who's here with us. And she introduced me to Janae, who, ended up being basically the protagonist of the film. And we initially thought we were going to just make like a nice short film about a home birth experience, and kind of show what the midwife does, what the doula does, and how the person felt kind of being cared for in their own home. And yeah, just a sweet little short story. We were thinking maybe like 10 or 15 minutes, something like that. But then, as you saw, things evolved and changed, and became a little bit more like my story, although obviously every story is unique. But yeah, we all kind of bonded in the experience, and we all jumped into it together, thinking it might not be that feature film that ended up being. But then when Jessica and I were editing together, we realized like it might be a longer thing. Yeah.
Well, no, it's a really terrific film, and appreciate you guys taking the time and patience to kind of tell it in such a layered way. I mean, Lisa, when you were first approached, I mean, were you excited to be able to give a kind of glimpse into this life, in making the film, or was there any hesitancy? And what was it like, having a film around, documenting your larger work?
That's a great question. I thought about, my personal, feelings, and then I thought about the bigger picture. Because personally, I'm not like a person that, is like out there like that. Like I move a lot of ways in privacy but since I started doing this birth work, I realized that, it's more than about, me, it's about us. And the birth work that I'm doing is part of a bigger movement. And that we needed to get the word out about what home birth is and what home birth isn't. And so, yeah, there was hesitancy. um, and because it's people in your personal space, but I decided that, yeah, the cause was greater than my own personal wants or desires.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time to do it, because I think we all as filmmakers know that, if it was us on the other side of the camera, we would definitely have some reflection about doing it. But one of the things I found really powerful about the film is that, like, just being able to share these stories makes people aware of, other options and approaches and things, and can just kind of be a catalyst for, opportunities and inspiring people. As you were kind of embarking on the film, I mean, one of the things with childbirth is just, it's not something that, it's a story that you tell over several weeks, but over, such a long period of time. How did you guys kind of go into it, I guess, with that kind of like running the marathon versus the sprint kind of idea, story-wise?
Well,
You're asking me? Oh, yeah.
All three of you. Yeah.
Go ahead, Jen.
I mean, the thing about childbirth is, though, it does like the story has a natural beginning, middle, and end. And, in some ways we missed the beginning because I didn't meet Janae until she was, I think, about 5 or 6 months pregnant, something like that. Like, she was getting, further along. The appointments were getting more regular, with Lisa and with the preparation she was doing with her doula, Devon. And, but, we knew that one way or another there was going to be a birth experience. One way or another there was going to be a baby in arms. And so it just, had a natural story arc. I mean, and I tried to be there for as many of those appointments and things as I could, because you never know what's going to happen or be talked about. Like, I wanted to capture the conversations that Lisa and Janae were having in particular, because I thought it was important to show, like the education piece, but also like decision making, because even if you have a very straightforward pregnancy, there's still like things you have to think about and decisions you have to make, and things you want to kind of think about in advance. So if they come up for you during childbirth, you're not trying to make those decisions then and learn about the options and, like, all of that. So I just thought it was important to show as much as I could of all the lead up, to the birth experience itself.
Yeah.
And
Well, oh, go ahead, Lisa.
I just would like to say that how the film turned out and my expectations in the beginning are extremely opposite. Like, I actually had no idea what I was getting into. And I didn't, of course, you never know how the story is going to go. And I was, like it, living through those moments, and then once the editing was done and we got to see the story, the beginning, middle, and end, I was just floored. Like, wow. And like I could not have imagined in my wildest dreams, honestly, that it would come out like that.
That's
So-
what
In a good way, Lisa?
Huh?
In a good way?
In a great way, in a great way. Like it's an amazing film. And I was like, I was a part of that. So
Yeah, you were a central part of that. I
Yeah,
mean,
very deep
so
role.
I could not have imagined that, honestly.
Well, I think it shows you what, like, when documentary filmmakers commit themselves and spend the time to kind of capture the nuances, and then, and their editor, kind of digs in to kind of condense so many hours of footage,
Mhm.
into a feature film, you know, what kind of emotional chords it can strike. And I guess, Jessica, I'm wondering, in that kind of early footage that you were looking through with Jen, what were some of the things that you were seeing that, you thought, hey, there might be kind of a bigger story here? And what was it like kind of going through, all these kind of personal moments and kind of pulling it together into a story?
Yeah, and I think just, in relationship also to your last question, I mean, it's an interesting editing process because in some ways it's such a chronological experience that we have to tell with the film while also thinking about how to bring out some of these story moments. And I think the thing that both Jen and I were really looking for was trying to sort of do Janae's story justice with like the experience that she went through, while also trying to convey some of the nuances to the audience that they might not understand, especially about the relationship between like midwives and doulas, or even some of the confusion, like when Janae was experiencing confusion herself around some of the information that she was getting from her doctor, and how, and just also like really making sure that the audience could kind of hopefully we convey this, but really sort of feel through some of those confusing moments that she went through herself. Because I think like when you're doing this as the first time, you're really figuring it out along the journey. And I mean, my birth experience was nothing like Janae's, it was very different, but that feeling of like, I've never done this before, and no matter how much information I have, like I still have to navigate through my own emotions and be figuring this out sort of along the journey. So I think that that's really what we were looking for in those emotional highs and lows that we wanted to convey in the storytelling part, while also again making sure that we were able to sort of do the justice and making sure that the audience could kind of get just get some exposure to this world where they really could walk away with a better sense of like what it had to offer, what the home birth world had to offer, what it meant to have a doula, what it meant to have a midwife.
Yeah, most definitely. And this question is kind of for all three of you. There's just a great kind of character story that you've told in the documentary, but also there's just kind of obviously, underlying social justice issues. And, I think the film can be kind of a catalyst for making change or awareness. And so, like, what do each of you personally, what want the kind of, each kind of audience member to kind of be take away or kind of think about, or what are some of the changes you'd like to kind of make out there in the world?
I guess I'll start. From the film, I just want people, the takeaway is everyone deserves the care that you get from a home birth midwife, no matter what place you give birth in. And that's been my whole, I worked in hospitals for over 20 years, so I am very familiar with the things that happen in a hospital setting versus the kind of slow and relationship building care you get with a midwife, and the relationship helps to build trust, and the trust helps with all of the preventative measures that you suggest. And and you end up having, even if you come in moderately risk, you end up being low risk because of the ways in which you get the care. And so I think my takeaway is like, home birth midwives rate, and even if you have to transfer, they still deserve that same type of care, where they know they're going to be cared for and listened to and respected, and that they have autonomy over their body.
Yeah, I mean, my hope is very similar to Lisa's, is just that, people will see the birth experience kind of from the eyes of the people who are going through it, and sort of like stop treating people like objects to be acted upon. And I think a lot of providers, even when very well-meaning, end up being kind of disrespectful to people. And when you're in childbirth, like, or even preparing to have your baby, like you're in such a vulnerable place, like hormonally, even in all sorts of ways. But then when you feel like people are doing things to you instead of like consulting you about what's happening with your own body and your baby, it's just like, it's terrifying. And it's just very traumatizing. So I want people to, have the care that they deserve, have the respect that they deserve, and have like empowering experiences. And even if they're hard, even if there are medical complications, that if they feel respected and like they had some agency, that they understand what needs to be done, and they sort of like make the choice to do that, like Janae did in the film, it makes all the difference. Like when you remember that experience for the rest of your life on your baby's birthday, it doesn't need to be a traumatic one. Like it could be a very positive one with the right care, with the right people around you.
Yeah,
Okay,
I was just gonna say, well, I don't really have much more to add. I mean, I think for me, the biggest thing, yeah, is really trying to show like a small example about how there can be so much more depth to the birth experience, and that I think that birthing people like desire that, and desire to be a part of the choices that are really that they're going through. And I think that and that also, I mean, really just to reiterate what Jen said, is like I think that things can go awry, and I think that we should all be sort of prepared for that. But the way that happens, it can happen in a delicate way, in a way where you're cared for, and you can know that even though maybe this isn't like exactly what you're expecting as the outcome, that in the end, like you'll know that you have the knowledge, and you're sort of put through the best steps possible that you can go through. And I think that that's what I really hope people can begin to see is a possibility for everyone that sort of goes through this experience.
awesome. And I always try to remember our audiences at SF Doc Fest is that we're lucky enough that filmmakers like you all, share their films early in their life, and we get a chance to see them. But our role is to kind of become your grassroots street team for the films we like. So like after the screening or on social media, talk about this really cool film, Born for This, and kind of spread the word. What are ways that folks can kind of continue to engage with the film and follow kind of updates and things?
Yeah, our website, bornforthis.us or .us is the place to go. You can link to our social media there. And we're also, many of us as part of this are working on a kind of related project that's called Doula Diaries with an organization that is awesome called Black Women Birthing Justice. They're a local org as well. And we're kind of telling a few short stories of birth experiences, also in conjunction with Highland Hospital's Beloved Birth Black Centering Program. So you can follow us and look for those stories to come out in the next year or so. And then, we welcome suggestions of like who should see this film, how they can see it. We have an educational distributor, which is Collective Eye. So we're nearly ready to set up, community screenings with organizations and stuff, and very open and welcoming for people to make those suggestions of, you know, wanting to bring it to their town or their hospital or clinic, any of that.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Jen, Jessica, and Lisa, for joining us. We really appreciate you being part of SF Doc Fest this year, and all the best with the film.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
for the
you.
film.